Hello everyone and welcome back to the Country Files. This time we're talking about the Danish buyers and their desire for design, quality and the famous hygge. And with me I have two experts, Jonas and Thomas, and also our legal anchor, Peter.
Hello.
Hello. So please introduce yourself. Let's start with Thomas.
My name is Thomas Dahlsgaard. I'm the founder of real estate company and Living. We are located on Gold Mile here in Marbella, and we've been here for the company for 5 years. I moved down here 6 years ago, where I started at a Swedish real estate agency. And my background is actually not in real estate at all. I have plus 20 years in banking industry, most of it investment banking, most of the years. So something completely different.
Very good.
Thank you. And Jonas?
My name is Jonas Brask, and I have founded Proeprties with my wife Elizabeth. We're both licensed real estate agents from Denmark and moved down here about 5 years ago. Started Proeprties 4 years ago. So I'm running strong now, yeah. And primarily working with Danish clients.
Thank you. And Peter?
I'm Peter,
Yes.
lawyer, one of the founders of Franke of Fuente, and also very, very interested in the country files. And I'm very interested in the processes in other countries and how that compares to the Spanish, and to find those singularities, because I believe that all nations are slightly different, even though we have many things in common maybe when we approach the process here. But that's why we're doing this. We've done it for a while now, the country files, and I'm happy to have both Jonas and Thomas here. We both, I know both of you, and I know also that you're working a lot, of course, with Danish clients. So today we're going to speak about the Danes, right? I should warn you that I have a sort of a little bit of fetish of the Danish language. I like to try to speak Danish, but I can't. So I might slip a few words here and there, so you have to tell me if I'm doing it wrong, okay?
Please do. Feel free.
Okay, we'll try it. So let's start with the Danish process, right? So I think that's a good angle, and that is going to hopefully then move us forward to the differences between Denmark and Spain when it comes to the technical process. But then also, of course, we're going to be interested to hear your experience about working with the Danish clients. Talk a little bit about the areas, what kind of products they like there, and what kind of challenges they usually face when they enter into the Spanish property process and so on. So if I can start with you, Jonas. I'm a buyer in Denmark, right?
Yeah.
Let's say in Copenhagen, just to have an example. And I want to buy something. So where do I start? Do I look for a buyer's agent, or how does the market work?
Well, I think what confuses a lot of the Danes coming here is that they are used to working off a main property portal. It's called Boligsiden in Denmark. And that they can work themselves. They contact the listing agents on their own. They start going on viewings. So no, they don't use a buyer's agent. Some buyer agent concepts are starting to pop up around Denmark, but to me it looks like it's not really gaining traction. And there's multiple reasons for that we can get into. But so they go meet these listing agents, and are presented a property that they would like to buy. And I would say one thing that's very different from the process here is this listing agent by law has to make this potential buyer aware of everything that could be relevant regarding the purchase. So in that way, the buyer is better helped in Denmark than what they are here, So that would be where you start.
So you start with doing the work yourself,
Yeah.
sort of.
Yeah.
And we have I usually compare to Sweden because that's where I'm from. We also have a main web page. I'm not going to say it here because that's going to be commercial. We should get paid for that.
Yeah.
But there's one main page, and people usually go online there, and they go directly to the listing. So Thomas, then that must mean that usually the real estate agencies in Denmark, they have the listings exclusively, or how
Yeah,
does?
they do.
Yeah.
You can actually have it with different agents, but we never see that.
Mm.
So in some kind of way, we kind of train the buyers to do everything themselves. They find the property, they book the viewings, which we normally do down here in Spain when we have a potential buyer. So it's there's a big difference in the way they do it in Spain and in Denmark.
Mm. So that means that, of course, the Danish potential buyers, then they are coming from a real estate market where they act independently.
Yeah.
Maybe, of course, they are asking for advice, but they are not advised and guided by an agent, usually.
Many times they kind of like they do it themselves, even if we tell them, please don't do it. We are here to help you. We actually do have knowledge. We live down here. We know how it works.
Yeah.
So, but you need to gain the trust of the client. But when you do get that, it's actually quite easy when you actually help them and you can see you're actually bringing value to them.
Yeah.
But we need to get over the first step of actually getting the trust of the client. But when we do get that, it's actually quite easy.
Yeah. So that's one of the, of course, main differences then. It's the way you approach the purchase. Here in Spain, you do it usually with a buyer's agent, and in Denmark you don't. So that's quite similar, I think, to many countries really. So let's say then that you're Thomas, you're the buyer in Denmark. You find the house or the property that you're interested in. Is it a bidding process? Is it a negotiation about price? Do you usually go with a lower price and you negotiate up to the asking price, or is it the other way around?
No, you can of course come with an offer the same way you can down here, but it's more regulated in Denmark. While we here in Spain maybe share more information, agents in between us. By law, that's not allowed in Denmark. So there is stricter rules to the way you do it in Denmark.
Okay. So, Jonas, when they enter into the buying process itself, they have found the property. How do they conclude the price, the final price?
Well, I don't think they really get any kind of counseling on the price. It's something that you walk into yourself as a buyer and have to figure out with yourself what you're willing to pay for this property. But I would also say that we, in general, are helped a lot better in terms of the data we have access to in Denmark. Because we actually, and it's presented really well on multiple websites where you can actually see, okay, what are all the villas sold on this road for?
Yeah.
When did they sell? And what kind of property it was. So that makes it a little bit easier. And then you can seek some kind of counseling before you actually commit to the property. Some people do that. And I would say the first-time buyers coming into the market and the younger buyers are more open to actually asking for help.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that gives, of course, any buyer power or authority, because this knowledge is power, right? So you have the square meter price, I'm sure, on that street. You have historical prices. What else do you have? Do you have? I know that it's similar to many other countries as well, Thomas. That the sellers have an obligation to provide any buyer with a lot of information. Am I right?
Yeah. In Denmark, it's called tilstandsrapport.
Say again.
Tilstandsrapport.
Tilstandsrapport.
Yeah. Kind of like here in Spain, you can get advice for a surveyor to, let's say you're going to buy a nice house and you're not completely sure. Then you ask a surveyor to assist you, and they will go out and go through the building with their eyes, being experienced in everything regarding a property that you might not have that knowledge. So kind of like buys you a little bit security, because you kind of like, it's in Denmark, buy a used car. It's the same here in Spain. You buy a property and you buy it the way it is. So you need to make sure that it's actually okay. And for people who are a little bit nervous about that, they can get assistance from a surveyor. If they buy a new built apartment, most people don't use it. Generally, when it comes to apartment, don't use it, not what we are seeing at least. But when it's houses, I will think that most people do it.
Yes.
When we bought 3 years ago, I didn't want to take a chance. So it's small money, don't save it, and then get
That's a technical inspection, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But the report is interesting, Jonas. So what do you find in this report? What kind of information is the Danish seller legally forced to provide to any buyer? Because there is some kind of obligations, right?
Well, the obligation doesn't rest on the vendor or the seller as much. It's actually on the agent. It's the agent's job and responsibility to present any information that could be relevant to a buyer. So that's actually a great setup. When it comes to the tilstandsrapport or condition report, then there's a great system in the way that you buy, and in English it would be an owner change insurance, wouldn't it, Thomas? On top, based on that condition report.
Yeah.
So whatever else comes up, you are insured for. In reality, these insurances are a little bit hard to wrestle with when any issues comes up.
Yeah.
But the system is there and the idea is good. That is something that we could use here in Spain.
So there is a legal obligation on the agent to provide full and transparent information.
Yep.
And that's interesting because I have met so many people here working on this market that are actually not aware of the fact that that also exists in Spain. But the regulation is one thing, and the application is something very different. And of course, the regulation here is much more vague. So there is actually in the Spanish housing law a particular section which says that any intermediary, which includes brokers, lawyers, anyone else that is intermediates in the transaction, must provide full and clear information about the property.
Yeah.
It says that is what the law says. It doesn't say exactly when. It doesn't exactly say how. You know as well as I do that it's not the case that the properties here are transparent in that way. And that gives more, of course, responsibility on the lawyers to do the due diligence, naturally. But it also is more often that also then happens that you discover things that you weren't aware of. So the difference here with the Danish system, it sounds like that the information should be there, and the lawyer, which I know also is an important person in the Danish system, might not encounter that many issues maybe compared to how the system works in Spain. I don't know if you have any experiences on that.
No, I think actually that we can maybe learn a little bit here in Spain from Denmark that the due diligence is done before a property is put on the market. Because we see many times a property is put on the market and suddenly half of the house or whatever it is not legal. And we could maybe help providing better information of actually doing that part before.
Yeah, that's a great point, Thomas. And to that, I also like with my Danish vendors, when I tell them, hey, I'm going to have a talk with your lawyer now before we put your property up for sale. Because there might be some issues that we don't know of, but there could also be some opportunities that we don't know of. So it's completely backwards that you do the due diligence whenever the buyer's there and you have agreed on numbers. And then all of these factors could come up that could affect the value.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I know that if we continue the buying process then in Denmark, so you have come to a conclusion about price, then I know that the buyer, they're usually represented by a lawyer. Am I right, Thomas?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an excellent system you have there.
Yeah.
Of course you will say that.
And the main task, I would suppose, for the lawyer is to perform the due diligence of the property, even though the information should be more or less available.
Yeah.
Contractual negotiations, etc. Am I right?
Mostly they are done before, but it could be something about when is the takeover and so on. So, and have in mind, most of the people buying, they are not legally up to speed when it comes to what is the process. So you need some kind of guidance. And a lawyer in Denmark has a high star. When they're saying something, we actually believe what they're saying. So we trust them big time.
I know actually this is a very side story, but I know that it's very hard to get approved by the Danish Bar Association. It's pretty hard in Sweden also.
Okay.
This is a side story, but I know that it's very hard to enter into the association. So when you're finally a licensed advocate in Denmark, then you have fulfilled a lot of tough requirements. Okay, so but I know that there's usually a clause. This is interesting for me, which is quite similar to the clause in the reservation contract here in Spain, in Denmark, because there is something that is similar to subject to due diligence clause in the first contract in Denmark. Am I right?
Yeah. It pretty much works the same way. And the condition of being able to obtain a mortgage is usually put in the purchase agreements too.
Subject to mortgage as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's fairly normal, and I would say most people, they use a lawyer when they're buying nowadays to run it over. So that gives them 6 days to have their lawyer pull them out of the deal, or the bank say no financing.
And the banks can do that within the 6 days, Mr. Banker?
Well, they used to. I don't know, nowadays everything seems to be going a little bit slower. So
Okay.
I wouldn't put my money on that.
But 6 days is what you're aiming for?
Yeah, but normally, because in Denmark we actually start talking with the bank much earlier in the process.
Yeah.
It's not like down here you come and you fall in love with something, I want to buy it, and then the bank, okay, I need to talk with them as well. In Denmark we actually talk with the bank before.
Yeah.
So all that is, in most cases, that is cleared out before.
This is a minor thing, but it's still interesting, I think, at least for me. The pre-approval from the bank,
Yeah.
can you rely on that? Or because here in Spain, it's more of it's an indication, but of course it's pending the evaluation of the property of the bank. But the pre-approval in Denmark, is it solid?
Yeah, you can actually get a certification saying that you're allowed to buy up to this amount. So yes.
Okay, so that is something I suppose, Jonas, when your clients down here talking about financing, you need to make them aware of the differences between pre-approval in Denmark and pre-approval, so to speak, here in Spain.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big difference. Like I used to do all these valuations for the banks, and whenever I would go to a valuation for a buyer who was buying a property and needed financing, like we would always put the value on the property as what it was sold for in the free market, because that's the value of the property, whatever people are willing to pay for it. Where it's a lot different here, where the banks, they often don't agree with the number the property was sold for. So that's an issue you have to make the Danes aware of. Yeah.
And how about contracts then? Because you mentioned here there is a clause then subject to the legal due diligence of the lawyer, subject to mortgage. You have usually 6 days. Is that a pre-contract? Is that a first contract similar to our reservation contract here in Andalusia, or is that actually the private purchase contract that you're talking about?
The first thing they sign, and the only thing a buyer signs, is the purchase contract. And in that it states that the lawyer has 6 days to look over all the documents. The bank has 6 days to approve of the mortgage. And they can also just pull out of the deal within 6 days. That's going to cost the buyer 1% of the purchase amount. So I've actually never seen that happen. So that's the normal setup.
Okay.
One document, and it's not. You can still fall back on the lawyer. They can pull you out if anything is no bueno. So yeah.
Okay, so when we have hit this stage in the process, it sounds like it has quite some big similarities to the Spanish process, meaning, well, not in terms of the agent's role, of course, but I mean the technical process of this contract, and it's subject to due diligence, subject to mortgage, you're assisted by a lawyer. So those are not big surprises, I guess, then for the Danes when they're buying here. They can see the similarities in that part of the process, Thomas?
Yes, and they are also, I don't know how to put the word, well trained. They come down, they're prepared, they know what they can buy for. So if you go to a potential property here and you say they're actually cash buyer, meaning they might have the mortgage financed back home in Denmark, or at least they've looked into that already. So Danish clients are actually quite good. They are prepared when they come.
Okay, how is that? Why is that? Is it the Danish mentality of having things in order?
Yes, it is actually that we like to have things in order. I remember a Polish colleague actually showed me a picture. I think it was when the crown was took over from the Queen, and they went to the castle, and there was thousands of people cheering him on. And normally you would think, okay, they had to stay behind something. You would put a fence or something. There was a line on the street. I don't know if it was a spray can or tape or whatever. And on the picture you can see, well, at least hundreds of people standing close to the line. Not even one of them stepped on the line. We are told you're allowed to go here too, and that's where we stay behind.
Really?
Yeah, so we actually trust when people are saying something.
I thought that was a Swedish thing.
No. COVID. You Swedish people, you are all over the place. We Danish people, we are stay inside.
Not me, I was locked up in here.
Okay, okay. The people in Sweden, they are all over the place.
That's true.
And in Denmark, we're kind of looking over to Sweden thinking, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
We've been told we need to stay inside, so we stay inside.
Yeah.
So this is a bigger conversation. Are we shifting? Are we Swedes becoming the Danes and the Danes are becoming the Swedes? Because I thought always that we are the organized, we are very much in order, we follow the rules, we want to have consensus, we don't like conflicts, we're careful.
No, but we are neighbors, so we are alike. Like with the Norwegians as well. There's a big difference from Danish to Spanish than from Swedish to Danish. So we're not far from each other, but there are differences.
Yeah. Well, the directness is one, right, Jonas? Now let's talk about culture, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit silly perhaps, but and of course it doesn't apply to everyone. But we should say that. But there is a saying that Swedes are not that direct, right? But the Danes are more direct, and you say what you say what you mean, and you don't mess around, you know? Is that true?
I find that to be very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's similar to the Dutch.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
We had a conversation here. We had a guest over talking about the Belgium and the Dutch buyers.
Yeah, I saw the one, yeah.
At least from that conversation, we could conclude that we Swedes had much more in common with the Belgians, and the Danes had, we thought, much more in common with the Dutch.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's say that is true.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, as Thomas said here, that part of the process is subject to mortgage, subject to due diligence, you're assisted by a lawyer. That is sort of similar. When we then go further into the Danish process, then maybe we will see some clear differences, because I know that there's no notary, of course, involved in Denmark. There's a highly digitized digital society. The land registry is digital in that way. You don't have to manually go to a notary. You don't have to draft sign anything physically, etc. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. Everything is digital. So when the Danes, they come here, I kind of try to pump up the experience of going to the notary and go, this is an experience, take it for what it is, because they often go, why are we here again? You know, which is funny because everything is handled digitally in Denmark. Yeah. So that's a big difference.
And I can actually, I recognize this. It's a little bit funny because when you have certain clients at the notary, you're signing the power of attorney, it's their first time at the notary. Yeah. And they're also almost smiling a little bit, you know? It's like they're watching a show. Yeah. What's going to happen now? When does the notary enter the room?
Exactly.
And the notary enters, he sits down, you know, and it's a bit of a ceremony, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
But if you do it as something fun and experience, then all the clients are okay with it. Yeah. As long as we just tell them, be aware, it costs you, I don't know, 100 euros or so, and it will be 1 hour of your time you don't get back. But just see it as an experience and the difference of Spain versus Denmark. Yeah. And then we go from there with a big smile on our face, and it's kind of like, okay, that was a little bit funny.
Yeah. Okay, but the process itself it follows a quite clear path, right? So the Danes know exactly how it works, I'm sure, how you buy a property in Denmark. You have the information clearly there. You have the listing agent, you have the buyer, contracts, etc., due diligence. And then where do you sign? Is there a title deed you sign in Denmark, or how do you become the owner of that new house?
Yeah, you do that digitally as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really not that sexy buying a property in Denmark because everything can be done from your inbox. So it is a different thing here. And actually, as long as you put it to the clients that this is an experience, you know, this is going to be fun, take it for what it is, then it's actually quite fun.
Okay.
But yeah, you sign it all, deed and everything online.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is a big thing buying a property.
Yeah.
It's normally a big investment. So it is a little bit funny to actually go and say, okay, now I actually get the keys. It's kind of like you're putting the money on the keys.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, okay, it's weird. It's like going 20, 30 years back in time, but people actually see, okay, it's actually also a little bit funny.
Yeah. Well, you can always choose how you view that,
Yeah.
right? You can decide for yourself. So, in your experience, Thomas, when you are assisting your Danish clients, which are the main, what's the confusion or the challenges for them when they come here?
Oh,
mainly?
First of all, we kind of, trained them to do everything by themselves. And it's very important to tell them, please share information with me. I'm here to help you. I have the same target as you, the same goal. If I don't find the right property for you, I don't get paid. So it's not like we're trying to get you something that is not for you. We have the same goal. And we actually do have experience. We know things down here because we are based here. And they're actually kind of playing away. This is not their home turf. So completely new experience. So we just literally need to take their hand and just guide them through everything. Like taking the lawyer and say, okay, let's go to the notary. We book that as we book a viewing when they come down and we get a power of attorney. Then they maybe don't get to experience the big paper trail that we have down here. So it's just more like guiding the client because the property is out there. That's not a problem. We will find that. But building that trust with the client is the most important thing in my view.
And the orderly Danes then, you, as you said, like to have things in order. They are prepared. That means, I guess, that they have done research as well on the areas and prices, etc. But we all know here that it's quite difficult to navigate prices still, even though we have better knowledge now and better information through the notaries. But do you find that you have to have a bit of a conversation with your clients so that they understand that it's not that easy to do it yourself?
Yes, but again, coming back to it is something completely new and different. And when we tell them about this, that again, I'm here to guide you. I'm on the same side as you. Have in mind when you're going out and seeing new properties, if you do that by yourself, you're met with the salesperson, meaning they are not on your side. It might be good to have someone in your corner who represent you and say, okay, he didn't say about this, but that is maybe not so good. Or on the next one, she didn't say about this, that's maybe not so good. So because there's always something you need to compromise on, but we need to tell that to the clients so they know that before they make their final decision.
Yeah.
And if you're standing there as a salesperson, many times only hear all the good things and maybe not the not so good things.
Oh, well, that's clear. How about you, Jonas? What do you do? What's your experience with Danish clients? What do they expect? What's the challenges? What do you need to focus on?
In my experience, they have quite high expectations for the level of service they hope to receive when coming here, because they're used to the setup in Denmark, of course. And then it's about, in my opinion, it's about labeling a lot of the differences up front before they get frustrated with it. So telling them the story about, if you rewind back a little bit, they are used to being 100% in control whenever they're buying something in Denmark. So it's hard for them to kind of hand over some of that control to the real estate agent here. And I think one of the first things to label is the data flow to like places like Idealista. And you can't really rely on, the overview you can kind of create and the understanding you can create from a certain market in there. So if you just label these differences up front, they tend to understand it and relax more in the process.
Are they tough negotiators?
Yes.
You think so? Yeah.
Yeah, we want to do a good bargain.
Yeah.
Not with the Swedish. For me, if they fell in love with something, they take it.
Yeah.
With us, we feel like we need to make a good deal. So, yeah.
But you know what? This is again me just, making conversation perhaps, but falling back on the Dutch connection here, a country built by trade, usually over the sea, and the Danes were also traders, right? So you have this kind of commercial DNA, almost like tradesmen, and making deals, as you say. Huge shipment industry, of course.
Yeah.
So maybe that's in your DNA to actually, you should negotiate. That's the normal.
Yeah, I don't. We don't want to stand and get a presentation or meeting a sales agent saying that I have 3 more viewings today, or buy this today because it's sold tomorrow, or the price will go up. Then for us, we kind of just step back a little bit.
Okay.
That's going to be too pushy. We are not into that.
Okay.
It's more like be honest, be fair, and then give information. Because sometimes the mañana, when we can actually talk with the client about that. So let's say you do a power of attorney or the deal is ongoing, say, okay, have in mind, dear client, the next 2 or 3 weeks, the lawyer is doing the due diligence. It doesn't mean that the lawyer fell asleep and is not reacting. It's actually because they're doing the job. So you might not hear anything for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, perfect. But if they don't get that information, they're kind of like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah.
Because all clients, exactly, their deal is the most important deal in the world. So they, of course, need to get this information. But as long as we provide information for them, it's, I think they're okay, easy.
Okay, let's talk about areas then, Jonas. I know you yourself, you live in Micha's area. I heard something that there's a Danish community over there, am I right?
Well, I not a certain community, but yeah, there are a lot of Danes there. They appreciate the distance to the airport and the prices and the view and everything else, yeah. So
But can you define certain areas along the coast where you would say that this is, here we have, a big minority of Danish?
I would say Franke of Franke and Malin, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And I would think that's where the most are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you, Thomas? It's just your...
Yeah, I'll agree. So I'm living in Nueva Andalusia, the Swedish area.
Yeah.
So we kind of like all have our different areas on the coast, if it's the Finnish, Danish or Norwegian. And a little bit funny because you actually moved down here, maybe not to meet the same kind you just moved away from, because then why move? But I don't know, if there's some kind of a little bit safety in it, that, okay, we are able to speak Danish to someone if we need to, then so.
I think that's quite normal. I'm going to include myself in this. Maybe other people have different opinions, but we all say that we move down. We want to be integrated with the Spanish community, only hang out with the international people. I moved away from Sweden, but then we go back to the Swedes, so we go back to the Danish.
Yeah.
I think that's normal. Yeah, it's probably secure. That's what you know in the end.
Yeah. We do see more and more Danish people actually focusing on the Marbella area. We also see Estepona growing a lot. So maybe we just need to talk with the client and say, okay, maybe start the clock when you close the front door of your property back home in Denmark. Before you get to the airport, you need to be at the airport 2.5 hours before, 3.5 hours flight. Is it that important if it takes 7 minutes and 5 minutes, or 7 minutes and 20 minutes, if I can find you the right property? And when you say it like that, it's kind of like, no. And a few cases, maybe if they are moving down here, they need to work a lot, and working a lot could maybe be abroad, so they need to be close to the airport because they need to go there many times, then maybe yes. But in other cases, and most cases, it's not that important when you talk with the client when it comes to that.
So in that particular area then, just as an example, Jonas, what attracts the Danish people to Benalmádena, Mijas, that area?
I think there's a lot of different things that attracts them, but the main thing is that they know someone living there already who kind of vouched for the area and the lifestyle and everything. So that's what brings them in to begin with. Then I would say that distance to the airport makes a difference for some people that maybe wants to come visit 10, 15, 20 times during the year for quick trips. But yeah, mainly friends and family that refers them into that area. And then Fuengirola feels homey to a lot of people. There's life there all year round, which is something special. So yeah, I would say that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a question to both of you. Relocation clients. So let's say the last 3 years or the last year or so, in your experience, your clients, are they buying a vacational home, or they're buying some to live here permanently, or they're buying something to live in maybe in a few years' time permanently? So there's a plan to relocate. What do you say, Jonas?
I would say 50% of our clients, they have an idea of being able to, within a couple of years, spend maybe 3, 4 to 5 months here out of the year. And we don't have a lot of relocation clients. And the ones that we do have is actually really young families, which is quite a surprise, like in their early 30s. So that's something new. But no, I don't see a lot of Danes relocating here and living here. But and they don't see an issue in going back and forth 10, 20 times during the year. So that's what works for them, at least in that area.
Thomas?
Yeah, we see the same. But we do also see younger families coming down here. Maybe business owners who actually can deduct their company from abroad. And nowadays you can do so many things online. That might mean that they need to go a little bit further to the airport because they need to fly to meeting and so on. But we see a lot of that we might not have seen 5, 10 years ago, where the buying people normally used to be a little bit older, more mature than what we see now. And what people are buying is simply lifestyle. It's if I need to put one word on it, it's life quality.
Absolutely.
The reason why we are sitting here and not in Scandinavia. The same reason.
So maybe to finish up now, I want to ask you about the Scandinavian design. I heard somebody talking about this online as well, and got some replies to that comment that made me want to discuss it with you. So there's a concept that the Scandinavian or Swedish design, the Swedish houses, has a certain design, and somebody made a comment on that, and then a Swedish agent actually replied and said, that's not true. We don't build boxes, white boxes in Sweden. That's a complete misconception. Maybe the interior design in some way can be called Swedish. What you're referring to is actually Danish. The Danish funkisvilla, for those who doesn't know what that is. Am I right, Jonas? Is that a concept in Denmark, Danish design and funkisvilla?
I would say it used to be. It's not trending anymore in the same way in Denmark.
What is it?
I think it's a good mix of different styles now, but it definitely has to be clean, straight lines, almost cold sometimes, if you look from a Spanish perspective. And yes, that was a hit for a lot of Scandinavian buyers. They wanted something that looked Scandinavian or Danish. Let's call it Danish. But that has went away quickly. I hear from most of the Danish buyers that when I'm buying a property in Spain, I would like to be able to see that I'm actually in Spain. I don't want it to look like a house that I could have bought in Denmark. So that has changed recently.
So how about you, Thomas? The white box, is it popular or is it?
No, it's going away. It could still underneath be a white box. But what we see is it's maybe on the outside there's stonework, woodwork, there are greeneries, and on the inside they have a Scandinavian style. So it might be a white box underneath, but you don't see it, and that's not the feeling you're getting. So no one really wants that anymore.
All right, that's interesting. Okay then, so now hopefully there are colleagues of yours watching this podcast and listening to it, and they have never worked with Danish clients before. They have a new lead, they're on the phone talking with a Dane. What should they know? What should they really learn from this? How can you advise them?
I think my best advice with the Danish client is don't try to sell them anything. It might sound a little bit strange, but the Danes, in my opinion, they don't want to be sold to, they want to be helped. And I would say as soon as they get the sense that they're not getting the full picture from you and you're trying to move a situation a certain way, then they back off. You lose all trust no matter how little of a thing you try to twist the situation into. And that could be for many reasons. That could be a commission thing. Some agents try to move certain clients in some direction. And I would say the Danes in general are really business savvy. That's my experience. So be a straight shooter. Rather be. I sometimes tell a client, don't think that I'm pessimistic. I'm just really telling you things how it is, you know, and that creates a lot of trust and actually makes it easier to work with them. So and they, don't sell to a Dane, in my opinion.
Okay, don't sell to a Dane, Thomas.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Be honest, because there's always something that is not so positive in any property. It doesn't matter. You don't get everything. There's some need to have and there's some nice to have, and there might be a few nice to have that you will not get. But you cannot hide these things. You need to be honest and tell it. And then bottom line is we need to bring value to a client. If we don't do that, why the hell should they use us? So, kind of like treat people the way you want them to treat you. It's quite simple. And then it will work out all fine.
Okay. That's some beautiful ending words right there. So gentlemen, Jonas, Thomas, I think we're going to end there, right, Malin?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been the Danish Country Files.